folks, well, welcome back to my channel, and for this video I'm going to be doing another book review of a Scottish novel. But before I get on to that, a wee bit of housekeeping first. If you're enjoying my channel, if you enjoy my videos, if you can click on the subscribe button, click on that notification bell, leave some likes, leave some comments, it's always really appreciated. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I will post a link to the channel's ko-fi.com page in the description bar below and in the pinned comment in the comment section. So with that out of the road, the book that I'm going to be looking at for this video is called Toxic, and it's by Jackie McLean, and it is the first book in the Donna Davenport series, or I think as they're calling it on in the cover for this one, is it the Donna Davenport Mysteries. And the book itself is mostly set up around about the Dundee, Tayside area of Scotland, so it's kind of up in Kinnergarten in Angus, which is up on the east coast of Scotland. It's just to the north of Fife, so it's kind of right out on the North Sea. And what they've got on the front cover of the book is the Tay Bridge, or the modern Tay Bridge, because the first one actually collapsed and they had to rebuild it. So that's what you see on the front cover, is the Tay Bridge going across the Tay River. So the book itself starts with a prologue, which starts in 1984 in Bhopal in India, and this is something that I didn't know anything about. In December of 1984, in Bhopal in India, there was a massive gas leak from a factory, and it was MIC gas was released into the area, and it saw 2,200 people die immediately, and there was another 500,000 injuries caused by the incident. And so the story starts with this incident happening, and you are introduced to a young man who's kind of like woken out of sleep by a female friend of his called Mo. The female friend's called Mo, but the male, the young guy is left unnamed at this point, but you do find out who he is later on in the book. And they both managed to escape, during the prologue you are watching them try to escape from this accident, and it's during this incident while they're trying to get away, even though the young guy is obviously in a flight mode, he's still finding his thoughts are turning to Mo, and how he is finding her bossy and finding that she is emasculating him. And yeah, despite the fact that he's in a situation where he should be thinking, right, okay, let's get ourselves out of here, he's still thinking of her in a really negative light, which is a kind of character trait that does continue throughout the book for this character, but you don't realise until you find out who he actually is. And Mo becomes a recurring character as well throughout the series. And I did get the impression while I was reading the prologue that they did somehow get split up in the confusion. And it's after they get split up, the young man comes across one of the other people who's been caught up in the incident. He comes across this woman, and he becomes infuriated by her, and he essays her. And that is where the prologue ends. You don't actually see any of the gory detail, you see it's suggested that then there's a break, and it's once you get into the main bit of the actual plot itself, you're kind of dragged forward up to the present day into the city of Dundee. And it's at this point that we are introduced to the main character, the main protagonist of the novel, who is D.I. Davenport, or it's D.I. Donna Davenport. And for those who don't know, if someone's in the British police and they are a DC or a DI, they are a detective. So they are part of what is often referred to as CID, or the Criminal Investigation Department. I have no idea what the American equivalent of that is, because CID is very much within the civilian police. So they are the ones who are usually in plain clothes. They are the ones who, like, if someone's murdered, they're the ones who will go to the victim's family's home and liaise with the family, or if there's a major investigation on, they'll be the ones who will be in plain clothes leading the investigation. So Donna, being a DI, she's a detective inspector, so she's got a bit of influence, and she's got people under her who she has to kind of lead through different investigations. And the minute we meet Davenport, you very much get the impression that she has this reputation for getting herself into trouble, and that she is seen as being a bit of a troublemaker and a bit of a hotshot. Because the main bit of the story does start with her being called into the Chief Constable's office to be kind of dealt with. I'm sure he's a Chief Constable, but again, it's like she's been called into a superior's office, and she's supposed to be getting a bit of a telling off, and everyone who knows her is automatically going like, oh, something's happening. So she does have this reputation for being a hotshot, which is definitely something that does continue throughout the book and throughout the series itself. And something else that does seem to become a bit of a reoccurring theme as well is that she tries to quit. As her boss is giving her into trouble, she has this moment where she goes, "No, I've had enough, bye, see you later," and tries to quit. But she finds that she gets pulled back in, that suspension proceedings for her are scrapped, and she's pulled back in because traces of MIC have been found in Tayside, on the coast itself, on one of the beaches. And this is when another main character is introduced. It's D.I. Jonas Everton, who becomes a major reoccurring character throughout the series. Maybe not necessarily for the reasons that we may expect at first. So he's introduced because he's been sent down from Aberdeen to the Dundee office to help with investigation into MIC, but also as becomes clear that it has also a demotion for him as well. He's essentially getting shifted in our office because, yeah, he is not necessarily a pleasant person, and yeah, so he's getting shifted in, getting a demotion and moved because of things he's gotten up to. And conflict between him and Davenport happens straight away, happens kind of the minute they meet, because again they are paired up, so both of them are fairly opinionated, fairly stubborn and determined on doing things their way. But I did get the impression, even when I first was reading Toxic, that there was something more behind what was going on with Everton as well. But then again, that does get brought more to the fore later on during the book, and does very much adds to what's happening within the story. And there are two recurring side characters who are outside the police force, who do very much act as Davenport's support team. That's Natesh, who is a local taxi driver who ends up helping Davenport in quite a lot of the investigation. And I think he actually does end up getting himself into quite a few tight spots as well throughout the series. And there's Lebby, who at the start of this book is Donna Davenport's ex-girlfriend, and both of them have a bit of a strange relationship at the start, but they kind of work things out towards the end. And Natesh and Lebby do end up becoming very important for Davenport and her getting through everything that happens, because one thing that does play an important part in how Donna Davenport deals with a lot of things is the fact that she is bipolar. And I think I don't have bipolar myself. I've known people who have had bipolar, and I would say that the way that Jackie McLean deals with having a main character with bipolar, she does handle it quite well. The fact that she isn't presented as being a danger, she's presented as being a very good DI, that she very much can get people to give her the information she needs, and she can get an investigation done effectively and is very good at her job, despite the fact that she does have mental health struggles. But one thing that she does have, especially towards the start of Toxic, is she does have this worry that her boss, the one that kind of was trying to give her the telling off at the start, who's called Angus Ross, that she's worried that if he finds out that she's got bipolar disorder, that he will have her thrown off the force, that he will see her as being this liability, and that's something that she is very worried about. And the impression that I have gotten is that with something like bipolar, how people react to it, or how like an employer might react to it, is something that is definitely a major worry for a lot of people who do have something like bipolar, which is something that I do find really heartbreaking, at the fact that people do actually feel that they will get judged that way, and unfortunately in some cases they do. And I think that is kind of quite a good thing for Jackie McLean to have touched on within the novel, is try to highlight the fact that this is something that people with mental health issues are worried about, and try to get people to understand that this is a major worry. And so that is something that does kind of play an aspect within the book itself. But it's also the fact that the whole relationship between Donna and Everton as well, that Everton is essentially straight away comes across as being a nasty piece of work, that he hates women, that you find out about some of the things that he's gotten up to when he was up in Aberdeen, and you realise that that's essentially why he was sent down to Angus, down to Dundee. And I think the fact that probably what makes things worse for him as well is that you know that he really does not like Donna Davenport. He really has he's sort of gunning for her almost, especially the fact that he knows that everyone else in the station really gets on with her, really likes her, that she's a really popular member of staff. And the fact is also the fact that, yeah, she tends to be quite vocal in her opinion, quite very determined in what she wants to do and how she wants to carry out investigations, and that just adds to the tension between the two of them. And one thing that I quite liked about the way that Toxic was written is the fact that there are some small sections of the book that are from the point of view of the young man who survived the Bhopal disaster. It's never a full chapter. There's usually maybe like 2 or 3 paragraphs where you're getting a glimpse of what he's doing. So it does very much highlight the fact that he is still present, that you kind of get the impression that he has a hand in what is possibly happening with the MI6 traces that have been found on the Tayside coast. But yet again, that all comes out later. And I have to admit, as like with the way that Toxic is written as well, the chapters are fairly short, are quite punchy. It does very much help with the pace in the novel. It does very much keep the pace fast, and you never really get that moment where you can come up for air and get a breath, because you know that something else is going to happen and something else is going to happen. So you're just kind of constantly wondering how this is all tied together, how all this is going to come together and into a conclusion. So it does kind of keep you going along with the book and very much at a high pace. And I think that does very much help with not make sure that the novel doesn't get boring or doesn't lag or doesn't have essentially any downtime. You're constantly just having to keep going with what's happening. And I'm just trying to kind of catch up with my notes here. And it's not until I think maybe a quarter of the way through the book we actually find out why there's MI6 being found, or traces of MI6 being found on the coast. Essentially it's being smuggled in, and you do get some glimpses of how it's being smuggled in, or you've been getting glimpses of what's happening with those who are actually doing the smuggling. And it's all very much kind of cloak and dagger, very kind of shadowy, and they all know how dangerous it is, and it's during when you're starting to find out more about the MI6 being brought in, you start to get glimpses of who it is that's actually behind it all, and then you start putting two and two together, and as the penny finally drops, and it's like, as you do get a kind of moment of like, okay, that's, yeah. And it's roughly about the same time that Donna Davenport starts to realise what's really going on, and in one of her kind of manic moments that she decides to go off by herself and end it all without any help or support from any of her colleagues. She just goes off because she realises who it is that's behind it all. And there is going to be a spoiler here, so if you're not wanting to find out who it is that's the bad guy, I would like maybe turn off now, because it is during, maybe it was like the last third of the book, or the last quarter or something, that you find out that Everton is actually the bad guy. He's the one that's been behind it all, and that he's actually the young guy who survived the Bhopal disaster, and that he's the one who's been orchestrating the smuggling in of the MI6. And as after the dramatic kind of final battle, if you could say, if you call it the final battle, the final confrontation within the book. That Everton's arrested and he is taken away to be held in a high security prison in Scotland. But there's a bit of a reveal right at the end that very much sets up the sequel for this, which is called Shadows, which I will talk about in the next video. It very much does set it up where you want to definitely go and read the sequel and find out what happens, find out what Davenport does, what Everton does, because you know that it's almost like a kind of Holmes Moriarty relationship, that they're both trying to outsmart each other or try and bring about the other's downfall. And which is very much kind of quite ironic, as the fact that, yeah, Scotland does have a tradition of crime fiction which does involve Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who just happened to have been from Edinburgh. We've also got Ian Rankin, Val McDermid, so there's quite a few different writers from Scotland who write crime fiction. It's definitely one of the popular literary genres for writers in Scotland. I don't know what that says about the Scots or about Scottish culture, but it definitely seems to be something that just a bit of a quirk. And one thing I could seem to notice, that with the character of Jonas Everton, so who's essentially the bad guy, it could be very much seen as being symbolic of like maybe the patriarchy, or very much the antagonism the women can face when going into what could be seen as being very traditionally male or masculine professions like the police force, and how that can very much manifest itself, because as a character as well, if we realise that he is the main antagonist, that he does have that he's very antagonistic towards Donna, especially as she is seen as being a very vocal, outspoken policewoman who is very much good at her job and can play the guys at their own game, and is pretty much almost as intelligent as Everton, if not as intelligent, and he sees that as a threat. And so I don't know if maybe Jackie McLean intended that as a symbolic aspect of the book, but something that I kind of picked up on when I was reading it. So Toxic by Jackie McLean, I would say, is a novel that very much does have a place within Scotland's tradition of crime fiction, which again, as I was saying before, is a very long, prestigious tradition in Scotland, and one that I would definitely recommend treating yourself to if you are a fan of crime fiction, or specifically of crime fiction itself, and maybe looking for something a wee bit different, a wee bit not what you'd generally pick up from the bookshop. So that's Toxic by Jackie McLean. It's got a bit of a kind of longer review than normal for this one, but definitely a book that I enjoyed reading and probably will try and read again at some point, because again, it's one of those good books that, with the chapters being fairly short and fairly punchy, you can easily sit and get through a good section of the book quite easily without even realising. I do like the way that Jackie McLean does write her characters and the way she phrases things, so it's a very good read. Definitely something that I would recommend, and probably will try and read again myself as well. So that's my review for Toxic by Jackie McLean. Hopefully you will have enjoyed this video. Hopefully you will be intrigued by Toxic and by the Donna Davenport mysteries. I will be doing a review for the sequel called Shadows, which I will be hopefully putting up next week. So keep your eye out for that, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.